My name is Adrian Stanciu, and I'm going to kick off this conference for you. First of all, let me start by saying that I'm extremely impressed by the audience here. And yesterday when I arrived, Milan asked me, how do you think we can fit 170 people in this room? I said, wow, that's going to be difficult. And then he said, yeah, but we have 220 actually. So there's other people who are in another room who are watching this on a video. So I have to thank everybody for doing this and for coming to this conference. For me, it's a very good sign because it means that the subject of organizational culture has gained some traction in our societies. And I'm a bit of a fan of it. And I think it's a very important subject for the management, the way we manage companies today. And what we aim by the end of this day is to, first of all, tell you why we think it's important. And secondly, if we manage to convince you that it's important, to give you some ideas about what you can do in your own organizations or for the customers that you work for in order to introduce some of these concepts and ideas into their practice. So without further ado, let me go into my presentation now. Now, the objective of my presentation is to introduce you all to some of the concepts and the ideas that you are going to see deployed during the day. And my main task is to make the life of the other presenters in the conference a bit easier by the fact that they will not have to go through general ideas and concepts anymore. So I will cover that part. And I'll leave the other people to come up with the real-life example and the case studies that I'm sure you're here for. So let me start then by asking you a question. When we speak about organizational culture, what comes to your mind? What's this animal for you? Any ideas, any thoughts? I'm not moving on until somebody gives me an idea, so. I know it's early in the morning, but we have a hand there? Yeah? No? We have one here.
One association, teamwork.
Teamwork, yeah, okay. Teamwork. That means we work together, yeah? Right, okay. What else?
People share common values and their objectives.
Okay, people sharing something, common values, common goals, yeah, okay. Anything else?
Some rules and norms of behavior.
Okay. Rules and norms of behavior we had here. Yeah. Anything else?
It's also about the way we interact in our organization, how we speak to each other, how we help each other or not help each other.
Okay, the way we interact in our organization, yeah, how we speak to each other and how we work together. Okay. So basically you're spot on. This is what we generally mean by organizational culture. It's, if you want a definition, is about the basic assumptions, shared values and beliefs that guide an organization, the way organizational members behave toward each other, and the way they work, the way they approach their work. To put it in a more, if you want, empirical but easier or funnier concept, there is a famous story about the 6 monkeys in a cage. I don't know if you know it. You know it? No? They actually claim this is a real experiment, and as the Italians say, si non è vero è ben trovato. If it's not really true, it's certainly well put. And they say that if you take a cage and you put 6 monkeys in the cage, and then from the ceiling of the cage, you hang a banana. And what will happen is that the alpha male of the group will try to get to the banana. But you don't allow that to happen. Yeah? You'll stand outside the room, outside the cage, with one of those big firefighter hoses, and you spray all the monkeys with water. The one who tries to get to the banana and everybody else. But the guy's a persistent bugger, so he will try again and again. And you are a persistent bugger as well, yeah? You spray them again and again until they all give up. Now, what you do is you take one of these monkeys and you replace it with a new monkey. And the new monkey will try to get to the banana. And it's very likely that you will not need the water hose because the other monkeys will pull it down. Yeah? And they will tell her, you idiot, you don't go to that banana because you get sprayed with water. And then you take another one out and you replace it with a new one. And this time for sure you won't need a water hose. And what's very funny is that the new monkey, who was never sprayed with water, will participate in the fight because she wants to show that she's a member of the group, yeah? And actually she will kick and scream as much as everybody else. And you continue the experiment another 4 times until you end up with a cage with 6 monkeys who have never been sprayed with water and never go to the banana. Because this is how we do things around here. Yeah? That's organizational culture. It comes from history, it comes from experiment if you want, it comes from experience, it comes from shared values and beliefs. Some of them are true, some of them are not necessarily true. That's just how we do things around here. And obviously, the other question that we need to ask ourselves is, does it matter? Okay, there is a way. I don't want to enter too much into a philosophy about why we do this. But every group, every organization, every group of people that do something together tend to develop a way of doing that something. That is a culture. But the question that really matters for us as managers is, does it really matter? Does it influence the way we work? What do you think? Should we care about this? They will develop a culture, okay, big deal, so what? Everybody develops a culture. Why would it be important? Any idea? Is it important? No? I heard somebody make the following analogy once in a similar conference. And he said, it's like sailing with the wind. Yeah? You can sail with a favorable wind, but you can sail with an unfavorable wind. At the end of the day, you get to your destination. But if you have the wind blowing in your face, you need to tack, it's called in sailing. So you need to go like this. You reach your destination, but it takes twice the time and twice the effort. As one of my customers put it, he said to me, Adrian, our problem is not that we don't achieve results. Our problem is that we make too much effort in achieving results. So this is why it matters. You can do things with or without culture management. Without culture management, it's much more difficult. The wind sometimes will blow in your face. And I'll try to explain why. So organizational culture is all these things. The way we do things, how we act under pressure, how decisions get made when you're not there, what's normal, what's expected from you to survive. This is a model that I use with my customers to explain the role of culture in their organization. And what I tell them is that all organizations in the world have the same purpose, which is to translate the vision of the founders, of the shareholders, of the board into business results. This is why every manager in the world is employed. And this is why every consultant in the world is employed. So we all in this room have a job because of this. Now, there is a way of doing this, which is a classical paradigm of doing this. It's a paradigm of strategic policy deployment, it's called. And typically, it would go through stages, the first one being the mission stage. And it's debatable whether the mission precedes or transcedes the vision or not. But what's important is the mission is a declaration of purpose, what we stand for, why should people work with us, why should customers buy our product, why should employees work for us. And then you go to what's called strategic objectives. So how do you operationalize the mission? How do you know that you have achieved your goal? And this is your strategic objectives. And then you move from those objectives to unit level strategies. So what do we need to actually do in order to achieve those objectives? And then you move this to plans. operational plans, budgets, individual level objectives, performance management. All the systems that you operate on a daily basis in your organizations will fall here. And what happens is that if you talk to people, you'll find out, and if you watch organizations, you'll find out that there is a rather loose, if you want, relationship between this and this. In other words, there are companies with good plans and bad results, and companies with good results and bad plans. And if you start to work behind that and ask the question why this happens, what do you think people answer? Any idea? How can you have good plans and bad results? No? Any idea? Anybody ever had good plans and bad results? I did. Very often it boils down to implementation. Strategy is easy, implementation is hard, my customers tell me. And I ask them, what do you mean implementation is hard? And they tell me, you know, it's all about people. We'd like to do this, but we can't find the right people. People in this country, if they are expatriate managers, sometimes you hear them saying this. People in this country don't. You fill in the blanks. Yeah? They don't do something. Yeah? And they probably are right. Well, everybody's probably right. Now, I ask the next question, what do you do about it? Yeah? People in this country don't, so what do you do about it? And here, there's less of a debate. Sometimes people say nothing. They don't understand. What do you mean, what do I do? This is how people are. Yeah? So what we tell them is that you can actually do something about it. And you can also do something about it in the same strategic way, philosophical way. And the first level here is the level of values. Organizations need to share values. Now, this is far easier said than done. All our customers have vision, mission, and values. But you go inside the organization and ask the people what those values mean in practical terms, and they don't mean anything. They, generally speaking, they are a screensaver and a mouse pad. That's where it stops. Yeah. So we will go out in a strategic retreat with the top management. We spend 2 days discussing, debating, and having fun in the evening. We come back with a mission, vision, and values. We put them on a mouse pad. Job done. Yeah? They must happen. Now we have a mouse pad, for Christ's sake. They have to happen. Obviously it doesn't, because values need to be translated into something. It's not just about being translated. It's also about how good the values system is, how thorough and deep the values system is. I'll give you some examples. I don't want to take too much of your time, but just some examples. I have a customer who had on his value set, share the dream. Share the dream. Nice words. How do you operationalize them? What do you tell people? You didn't share the dream enough today? You have to share a bit more? Yeah? It's impossible to give it meaning. In other words, every individual will have a different meaning from this value. It's far too vague. Somebody else had a value that said, be a winner. Nice words. I asked him, who are the losers? And he said, no, nobody's the losers. We are all winners. Come on, give me a break. Do you really think that this is how the human psyche works? That we can all feel winners without losers? It's not like this. Yeah? We need losers around us in order to feel winners. By telling people be a winner, you effectively and actively create a culture of losers. You need to understand what is the implication behind your words. But this is not enough. The next thing is about norms. Principles and norms. What do they mean in practical terms? And this is where things start to go astray. Because management doesn't like to talk in frameworks of values and principles. They prefer to talk in frameworks of tasks and everyday objectives. And most of the time when they give feedback to people, they don't realize that every feedback, every intervention that you have with a subordinate is a norming intervention. You establish a principle. And principles need to be aligned. I'll give you an example. I had a discussion with a customer once about the level of punishment in the organization. This is a big, big problem in Romania. The average Romanian organization uses punishment in management more than 94% of the organizations in the world. And they don't even realize it. Because it's not disciplinary punishment. Yeah? They don't take official action, if you want. Most of the times it's negative feedback, public negative feedback, making people feel bad about themselves. And we had a discussion with the customer about this. And it was a lady, and she told me, oh, come on. Stop this consultant mumbo jumbo nonsense. We live in the real world, you know. I have somebody in the accounting department that every day comes with 30 minutes late. We start at 8:30, she comes at 9, every single day. What do you expect me to do? And I told her, what do you do? Well, I punish her, of course. Does she still come late? Yes. Do you see a connection here? Maybe it doesn't work. Okay, I said, okay, so you tell her that she has to come on time, right? Yes. Why? This is a key question, by the way. You have to ask yourselves this question every time you talk to an employee. Why? Why does she have to come on time? Because we start at 8:30. This, what you just heard, is a norming feedback. This establishes a norm behind the value. The norm is you have to come on time. Why? Because this is where we start. What's the value here? What's the value? How would you call this value? Because it's a value. How would you call it? Obedience, right? Obedience to something, to a system basically. Yeah? Either to a person, come because I tell you, or to a system, come because this is how the system works. Yeah? Now, obedience to a system is something that we call in our philosophy either dependent type of behavior or conventional type of behavior, depending on what you are obedient to. I'm not the judge of my customers' values, but I'm telling them you just establish a conventional norm here. Let me see your value statement. And guess what? There was no conventional on the value statement. There was cooperation, there was customer orientation, there was innovation, there was fun. Nothing about conventional behavior. Now I ask her, now what do you want me to do? I'm your employee. You talk to me about innovation and fun, and the first feedback I get from you is about conventional. What do I believe? What you say or what's written on the wall? The answer is obvious, yeah? I believe what you say. So there goes your value system down the drain with just one sentence. For one person, that particular person will never believe in that value set anymore. Do this another 100 times, and it's so easy to do, you can forget about your value set. Then she asked me, okay, so what do you want me to say? Do you want me to encourage her not to come on time? And I said, you can say anything that you want, as long as it is within your value set. So what do you think? Could my customer tell that employee anything within the value set that they had? Any idea? No? I'm sure you have some ideas. For instance, to give you an example, one thing she could tell would be in the lines of respect. You work in a team, people cannot do their work because you come late, and we all have to do extra work just to accommodate the fact that you come late. You don't respect your coworkers by doing that. This is a humanistic value, by the way, and it was very well aligned to their value set. She could be debriefed in terms of, for instance, customer orientation. There are customers who expect to see you at 8:30. They come in here expecting to be served, and they cannot be served because you come at 9. There were many ways in which she could have put the problem. But guess what? I went with her through all these ideas, and we couldn't find anyone. We couldn't find any example, any way of debriefing the value debriefing the behavior in the value set. Because this was a person who was working independently. This was a person who didn't see the customer anytime, and actually she didn't do any harm to the organization by coming late, any whatsoever. and she was doing her job. She just came late. So what do you do in such a case? Sorry? Change what?
The working time.
Yeah. Why not changing her working time? Why not asking her, why do you come late? And it turns out that she had small children that she had to take to the kindergarten in the morning. It was just impossible for her to come at 8:30. The kindergarten opened at 8. She couldn't take them earlier than 8. And between 8 and 8:30, she couldn't make it to the office. It was impossible for her. So she would go through any lengths. She would even quit her job before coming at 8:30. Why not let her come at 9? What's the problem? And this customer of mine said, yeah, but then I have to let everybody come at 9. Very good idea. Why don't you do this? If people do not need to be there 8:30, and why don't you introduce a flex time program in your organization and show some respect to your employees? Show that you live your own values, yeah? From the management side as well. Because I'll just make a short remark. When you discuss with customers about values, generally you discuss with management about their values, yeah? It's always the rest that need to be changed, not us, yeah? We're fine, they are bad. It doesn't work like that. Everybody needs to change, everybody needs to look into the mirror. So you have to be very careful, because everything that you do and everything that you say is actually a norming feedback that you give to your people. Sometimes you give it consciously, sometimes you give it subconsciously, but it establishes principles and norms. But this is not enough either, because the devil is in the details. You can have all the norms, you can have all the good principles in the world, and when you start acting, you act differently. Your leadership styles, your management styles, your interaction styles, your communication styles, your cooperation styles, they all have to be aligned with your values. You need to get constant feedback about yourself and your styles, because you tend to lose it. And if you do all this, people will start to behave the way you want them to behave. You have to be aligned and you have to be consistent. This is what we call the structure side of the organization. This is what we call the cultural side of the organization. This generates predictability. This generates flexibility to change. One thing that happens in the modern organization is that you cannot have organizations that are 100% predictable anymore, because the reality is not predictable anymore. The reality of 6 months ago was radically different than the reality we are facing today. Just 6 months ago. We just cannot survive anymore with organizations where everything is cast in stone and all the wisdom is at the top. It doesn't work anymore. We don't put this emphasis on culture because we'd like people to feel good in organization, although why not at the end of the day? But the reality, the fact of the matter is that organizations who do not care about putting in a performance-oriented culture cannot survive in the current environment. And I think the current crisis is a very, very good example that some organizations that thought they had found the magical potion by which they can survive with a command and control philosophy have discovered themselves wrong. And the strongest command and control philosophy in all organizations we have worked with is in the banks. It is not by coincidence. I tell you, it is not by coincidence that banks are in trouble today. And I do hope that people will think about it and understand that the way they run those organizations is part of the problem. And it can be part of the solution. This is led by management. This side is led by leadership. Very often we get our customers asking us, what do we need to be, a manager or a leader? And I tell them, the bad news, guys, you can't choose anymore. Yeah? You have to be both. There is no management position today in any organization where you can say, screw leadership, I don't need it. It's just not possible anymore. The opposite is true as well. There is no leadership position where you don't need execution and implementation discipline. That means a bit of management. Management is a push paradigm. Yeah? Management is based on the paradigm, we establish expectations, we establish metrics, and then we establish incentives for the people to get there. This is how it works. Leadership is a pull paradigm. Leadership speaks about creating a vision, creating a platform for alignment, making people put their own energy and effort into getting there. It's completely different. Leadership uses and unleashes and enables and leverages all the constructive power of an organization. It's difficult, it's philosophically complicated, you need to be bloody clever to do it. And I'm not saying just intelligence here, I'm saying emotional intelligence, you need to care. And it's about you. You cannot do it from a distance. It's hot, it's dirty, you need to be there. Yeah? You need to eat from the same pot as the soldiers, like Napoleon did. It cannot be done differently, but it works magically. And management, generally speaking, doesn't like it. Management tends to treat cultural and leadership problems with management tools. I'll give you an example. I once saw a manager literally in front of my very eyes telling an employee, you have to become more motivated. Now, wouldn't life be easier if it worked like this, right? But think about it. From a management perspective, it makes sense. Motivation. Do we have a metric for motivation? Hell yes. Now, you are at 0.7 motivation. By the end of the year, you have to get to 0.9, right? If you get to 0.9, you have 10,000 euro bonus. If you don't get to 0.9, I'll fire you. It works with everything else. Why not with motivation? Yeah? That's the problem with management. Management is used to a set of tools, and they deliver results in that area of the organization. When you work on this area of the organization, the paradigm is shifted upside down, completely upside down. And you need to do both. Now, what you're going to see during the day, you'll see many people showing you this model. This is a model that we use to measure and debrief customers in organizational culture. And I'm going to go through it very, very briefly to explain what it means. It's a model that speaks about beliefs, values, and styles. And generally speaking, what we measure with it is norms, organizational level norms. What is expected from the people to survive. And it's based on a paradigm that comes from individual styles, thinking styles. Yeah? There is such a thing as collective thinking styles, if you want, in an organization. And it's organized like this. On the vertical axis, it differentiates between orientation of people towards higher order needs and lower order needs. By higher and lower, we mean the hierarchical order in the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And generally speaking, here on the top of the model is the self-actualizing need. This is something that speaks about our desire to be better and to make progress in life. And here it's about the security needs, our desire to protect either our position or our status. On the other axis, it differentiates between people and task orientation. This is, again, something very frequent in the professional world. And there are two general types of culture. One type is what is called defensive culture. Defensive culture is oriented towards protecting the status quo, not changing things. And the other are constructive cultures. Constructive cultures are oriented towards the future. They are proactive. They foster innovation, collaboration, working together towards higher goals, doing something together. Now, the defensive culture systematically undermines performance because defensive cultures are oriented towards not changing anything. And there are actually two large types of defensive cultures, passive defensive and aggressive defensive. I'll tell you a story that embodies this. We in Romania are a very defensive nation. And it is not, again, it's not a coincidence that we are at the same time a backward society and a defensive nation. Yeah? It links together. You cannot make progress in life if you are defensive because all your actions are actually geared towards not changing anything. And you can see that even in the way people react or talk in various situations. So we had this, I have this example. I was once with a few friends who were having a beer, and at the table with us was one of our friends' friends who was French. And as any time when we have foreigners at the table, a discussion comes up about national culture, if you want. So this French guy says, now what's funny about you Romanians is that you never ended the war on the same side that you started it. Now, in the next millisecond, somebody at the table said, ha, look who's talking. You're talking who never won a war. Yeah? Now, what's this? What's this? Yeah, what is, you never ended the war on the same side as you started. What's this? How would you judge it? What's this?
It's an accusation.
Yeah, it's an attack. Yeah, it's an attack. So it generates a defense, right? So the first defense is, look who's talking, you who have never won a war. What kind of reaction is this? It's what we call an aggressive reaction, yeah? It's an aggressive reaction. Actually, it's a competitive, we are very competitive. It's an aggressive reaction who tries to establish supremacy. Not finishing a war on the same side is actually better than not winning any. Now, the fact that they didn't win any war has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that we didn't finish a war on the same side, right? But the sentence is not geared towards finding the truth. The sentence is geared towards shifting the blame. Yeah? Who are you to point the finger at me? Yeah? In the next nanosecond, somebody else at the table who tried to be nice and somehow calm down the incipient conflict said, yes, it's true that we are like this, but you know, we had a very loaded history. The Turks, I think they are the usual suspect in here as well, right? They are to blame for everything in the Balkans. It's the Turks and the communists, basically, yeah? One of the two. It's never us. It's either the Turks or the communists. We have to be thankful, actually, for the Turks. We would have nobody else to blame if it wasn't for them. Yeah? So you say, okay, but we had the Turks, the communists, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is also a defensive strategy. It's still oriented towards shifting blame. It's not us, it's the Turks. Yeah? The two strategies seem very different. One is powerful, aggressive, screw you, who are you to talk? The other is humble and accommodating. Yeah? But at the end of the day, look where I'm standing. Yeah? In the same bloody place. Both strategies actually have the same purpose, that I don't move. This is self-defeating. It happens on individual levels, it happens on organizational levels, it happens on all levels. People very often adopt strategies that say we shouldn't move. That's self-defeating. And this is the defensive culture, either aggressive or passive. It undermines performance. You cannot identify strategies that move you further because you have such a big vested interest in preserving the present. You start fighting each other instead of fighting the competition. You develop a win-lose mentality. If I'm not winning, I'm an idiot, so I cannot lose. I have to beat you all the time. We have this thing in Romania. It's a little bit better right now, but it used to be very, very hot. Like every day, we would have an article in the newspaper comparing us with Bulgaria. Unfavorably, of course. Like, Romania has lost the touristic war with Bulgaria. I didn't even know it started, and we already lost it. And I was thinking, why the hell do we do this? I mean, there are 25 countries in Europe who are better than both of us. We never look at them. Spain is better than both of us in tourism. Never look at Spain, because you can never beat Spain. Yeah? You can never, so you pick up a fight that you can win. This lowers the bar, actually, instead of raising it. We think that competitive is good, it's not. So it's a win-lose attitude based on beating others, not on excellence. How you look is more important than what you do in such cultures. How do people get to develop such culture? Sometimes it's by what we call misattribution of success. And we have been through this in our societies, both yours and mine. We have been through this. We've been through times where the stars and the planets were aligned to make us grow, and now we start to attribute success to everything that comes our way. It's like, to continue our sailing analogy, if you sail with fair weather, good wind from point A to point B, but you have a dirty hull, yeah, you know what the hull is, yeah? The body of the ship is dirty and you have shells on it. When you go to the other end successfully, you throw your anchor in the harbor, and now you open a checklist and say, okay, let's investigate our success. Why were we successful? Basically, because we have shells on the hull. Yeah? It's obvious. We have shells on the hull, we got there. That's why we got there. Yeah? So you start to attribute success to something that is actually not successful, just because all the other planets were aligned. And success leads to more success. Unfortunately, and you'll see that aggressive culture generates short-term gain and long-term loss. And on the short term, we gain. And unfortunately, most of the corporate governance now is short-termist. And even Maynard Keynes famously said, "One, forget about the long term. In the long term, we're all dead." And people start to believe this because of their brilliance, is not because of luck. Arrogance sets in, internal focus builds bureaucracy, and long-term performance deteriorates. And when it deteriorates, it's always somebody else's fault. So we take time before we understand what's the problem. Constructive cultures is completely the opposite. They are oriented towards excellence and change. Everybody is expected to contribute. Communication flows. People are okay. They don't have anything to fight for or defend amongst each other. People are encouraged to take decisions, take risks, grow other people, pursue excellence. It's externally focused. It looks at the outside world, not in the inside organization. Fosters candid discussions and open candid discussions about reality. Non-political atmosphere encourages leadership versus management. In terms of concepts that we work with, this area of the model that you will see always depicted in green, you also see it on that banner there is depicted in green, is what we call passive defensive norms. There are 4 passive defensive clusters of norms that or styles that we measure. One of them is avoidance. It shows you, approval. Let's start from the top. One of them is approval. It shows you organizations where people are encouraged to be nice to each other, even if they don't agree with each other. Conflict is discouraged, actively discouraged. You have to be politically correct. Sometimes you see that in diplomatic societies or circumstances where people say, oh yeah, really, very nice. And it doesn't mean anything. Yeah? The other is conventional. I already described the conventional organization is where norms and rules are better than ideas. I'll give you an example. I had once a discussion with a customer about a bank, yeah, about how to reduce their conventional in their profile. And we had all the management team, the top management team at the table. At one point, the marketing manager, mind you, the marketing manager said, "This is a very good idea. Unfortunately, we have a policy, an HR policy against it." This is conventional behavior at its absolute. We have the idea, we have the policy. Without 1 second of deliberation, the policy beats the idea. And by the way, the HR manager was in the room. Yeah? So instead of saying, "You from HR, can you change this policy?" it was, policy wins immediately. That's conventional, yeah? Don't get me wrong. Unconventional behavior is not about breaking the rules. It's about subjecting rules to a purpose, to a goal. Making rules deliver an objective rather than being just rules. Next one is dependent. Dependent organizations, people are encouraged to ask for approval and advice from superiors. You are actively encouraged to check your decision with superiors, not to decide on your own. Avoiding cultures, people avoid responsibility and blame. What I just described earlier on are avoiding attitudes, and you will see that widespread. We call them organizations that are centipede with problems. If you put a problem in the middle and you turn your head, the next moment everybody has something to do. Yeah? I go to have a coffee. I just remembered I have to send an email. If it's not on my job description kind of organization. Yeah? If it's not on my job description, it's not mine. Take it away. Next ones are what we call aggressive, oppositional culture. Opposition is organizations where people are encouraged to oppose each other. It's a very simple way of proving competence. You come and suggest something. If I don't want to take the risk of doing something or proposing something, I can just say no. And they are organizations in which immediately, when you come up with an idea or a suggestion, people immediately explain to you why it cannot be done. I'm sure you have seen this. And you ask them, okay, so what do you think can be done? I don't know, but I know this cannot be done. Yeah? I don't know what can be done, but I know this cannot be done. Power organizations are organizations in which people are encouraged to use force in order to solve problems, and generally make use of positional power in order to solve problems. Competitive organizations are organizations in which people are encouraged to fight each other. And basically you are better rewarded or better viewed in that organization if you outperform your peers. They tend to become inward looking, and they tend to turn everything into a turf war. And perfectionistic organizations are organizations in which they favor hard work. You're a good member if you work hard, if you work long hours, if you take very high objectives, unrealistically high objectives, and you never, ever fail. You never make mistakes. It's very stressful, and in the long run, it burns a lot of energy and resources for nothing. All these styles here and all these cultures work well if they are well balanced. So if you have too much of them, it will start to work against you. If you have too little of them, it will start to work against you probably as well. It's okay to have some level of aggressiveness in the organization. That's what our research says. But it has to be well balanced. The last one is the constructive norms and expectations. And here we have achievement norms, which means organizations that set goals, and people are encouraged to set themselves goals and strive for excellence, do something, yeah? Get somewhere, be somebody. They are also organizations where people are encouraged to think ahead and plan. I had a seminar, for instance, to give you an example, I had a seminar with a customer just a couple of months ago. I run a management development center for the senior management and key, what they call key managers. And we had the regional manager of the company delivering a speech on video. And he told those people, we are very happy to have you here in this management development center. We really count on you to deliver our strategy. And I just want to re-emphasize here, on this occasion, our strategy, because it's strong and clear. Double-digit revenue growth. Now, this is the lamest excuse of a strategy I've ever heard in my life. I mean, if this is strategy, then anything is strategy. That's what happens in some organizations. People just don't think strategically. They think from today to tomorrow to the next quarter. This is an organization where the next quarter actually doesn't exist. We have this quarter, forget about July. Let's concentrate on June. Yeah? July is another quarter. That's really, this is how it works. Yeah? It just doesn't work. Yeah? People don't, and if you see their achievement in their profile is very low, because there is no long-term orientation, there's no thinking ahead, there's no commitment to a higher level goal. And it needs that. Self-actualizing means organizations who are balanced, where people think about the future and change. They want to do things differently. They want to thrive. It's about quality and taking pride in what you do. It's about being high levels of integrity, high levels of creativity, always ready to take measured amount of risk, but to take risk in order to achieve things. This is the self-actualizing organization. It's based on change. Next one, humanistic. We move to the people orientation here. Basically, they are organizations that are based on humanistic values. And if I were to select one value out of all, it's trust. They are driven by trust. They are organizations in which you are encouraged to think that your peers, your colleagues, your coworkers are inherently good until proven wrong. And then you are working based on that. You cooperate, you help each other develop and grow. You listen to ideas, you take feedback in, and when you differ from the opinions of others, you differ in a way that shows them respect and consideration. Affiliative organizations are organizations where people like to work together. They are based on affiliation, on getting together in groups and teams. Teamwork is a very good example. Teamwork is natural in affiliative organizations. They're based on cooperation. Now, I will stop my presentation here. I don't want to take more of your time. Already extended my time was about 10 minutes. I just wanted to introduce you to these concepts and ideas because you'll see them develop during the day in many, many ways.